9/11, the day the world stopped. It began as an ordinary Tuesday morning, blue skies over New York, routine flights in the air, a world still half asleep to the idea that everything could change in a single hour. Then came the images that no one could unsee. 2 planes, 2 towers, and a silence that fell heavier than the dust that followed. On September 11, 2001, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives in the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history. In the weeks that followed, the United States and the world searched for answers. The 9/11 Commission promised clarity, a timeline, a cause, a story that made sense of the chaos. And yet, as time passed, so did trust. The questions that remained unanswered began to echo louder than the ones that were. Why did the towers fall the way they did? How did the world's most powerful air defense system fail to intercept 4 hijacked planes? Why did Building 7 collapse hours later, untouched by any aircraft? And how did this tragedy become the catalyst for 2 decades of war, surveillance, and political division? For some, the answers lie in official reports, detailed, technical, and verified. For others, they lie in shadows and inconsistencies, coincidences, and cover-ups. Between those worlds lives a story not just about what happened that day, but why people still argue about it nearly a quarter century later. This isn't about fueling theories or defending institutions. It's about understanding the power of questions, how uncertainty becomes belief, and belief becomes movement. Welcome to 9/11, the day the world stopped. A deep dive into fact, doubt, and the human need for truth and wherever it leads. Part 1, the official investigation. When the dust settled over Lower Manhattan, the first question wasn't who, it was how. America needed an explanation that matched the scale of its shock. Within days, federal agents, engineers, and intelligence analysts began what became the largest forensic inquiry in U.S. history. The 9/11 Commission in 2002, Congress created the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, known simply as the 9/11 Commission. Its mission: to reconstruct the timeline, expose system failures, and recommend ways to prevent another attack. After 18 months, millions of documents, and with 200 interviews, the Commission's 2004 report traced the plot from Al-Qaeda's rise in Afghanistan to the moment 4 hijacked airliners turned the sky into a weapon. It found that 19 men linked to Al-Qaeda, directed by Osama bin Laden, exploited weaknesses in intelligence sharing and airport security. 2 planes hit the Twin Towers, 1 struck the Pentagon, and 1, Flight 93, crashed in Pennsylvania when passengers fought back. The report described a failure of imagination. Separate agencies had fragments of the threat but never connected them, engineering the collapse. Meanwhile, structural engineers searched for the physical truth behind the tower's destruction. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, spent 3 years studying blueprints, steel samples, and thousands of videos. Their conclusion: the impact severed critical columns, stripped fireproofing, and unleashed jet fuel fires that reached nearly 1,000 degrees C. Floor trusses sagged, columns buckled, and once one story failed, gravity did the rest. NIST later investigated World Trade Center 7, the 47-story building that fell that afternoon. Their models pointed to fire-induced structural failure, not explosives, a finding supported by the American Society of Civil Engineers and multiple independent reviews. Beyond the physics, the official reports answered many questions but left emotional gaps. They described what happened in scientific language, not why it felt impossible. For a public still grieving, technical detail could sound like detachment. Into that silence stepped a wave of citizen researchers, filmmakers, and online forums asking their own questions. The investigation had closed the case on paper, but not in the public mind. In Part 2 of Why People Doubt, we explore how trauma, mistrust, and missing context turned skepticism into a global conversation that still divides people today. Part 2, Why People Doubt in the Aftermath of 9/11. Grief turned quickly into determination, then into doubt. The images were too sharp, the losses too vast, the answers too neat. When something that enormous happens, people look for meaning equal to the scale of the pain. And when the official story leaves gaps, the human mind fills them. The psychology of uncertainty, psychologists call it proportionality bias, the tendency to believe that big events must have big causes. If 19 men with box cutters could reshape history, it seems almost unbearable. So theories grow in the spaces where comprehension fails. It isn't always cynicism. It's an attempt to reclaim control when the world suddenly feels uncontrollable. The trust gap. By 2001, public confidence in institutions was already eroding. Scandals, misinformation, and decades of secrecy had left scars. When the government withheld certain security footage or redacted classified sections of the 9/11 report, it confirmed the suspicion that something was being hidden. Each withheld page became proof of a cover-up to those already inclined to believe one existed. The media effect. For the first time, the internet gave ordinary citizens a publishing press. Forums, documentaries, and amateur analyses multiplied. Websites shared grainy videos of the towers falling in slow motion, asking if gravity alone could explain the collapse. Others analyzed stock market trades, military drills, or statements by officials. Some theories were sincere investigations. Others blended fact and fiction until they were indistinguishable. The more these ideas circulated, the more the mainstream dismissed them, and the more believers felt vindicated. Distrust became identity. To question was patriotic. To accept was naive. The line between inquiry and accusation blurred. The emotional core underneath every argument was pain. Families wanted accountability. Survivors wanted answers, and citizens wanted to believe their world still made sense. In that struggle, doubt wasn't just a theory. It was a form of mourning. In Part 3, the debate over the collapse, we'll look at how one question, how the towers in Building 7 actually fell, became the center of the conflict between evidence, interpretation, and belief. Part 3, the debate over the collapse. What the evidence shows: in every great tragedy, there is a single image that never fades. For 9/11, it was not only the planes, but the sight of steel giants falling straight into their own footprints. To some, that image felt like physics breaking its own rules. For engineers, it became the question they had to solve: how the towers were built. The Twin Towers were marvels of 1970s engineering, light, flexible, and efficient. Each floor was a steel truss bridge spanning a central core of columns and an outer wall that bore much of the load. That design allowed open office space, but it also meant that when floors failed, weight could shift in ways few buildings had ever been tested for. What investigators found: when Flight 11 and Flight 175 struck, the impacts sheared fireproofing, snapped columns, and scattered jet fuel across multiple floors. Temperatures didn't need to melt steel. At around 600 degrees, strength drops by half. As trusses sagged, they pulled the outer walls inward until columns buckled. Once a single floor gave way, the mass above it fell with unimaginable momentum, initiating what engineers call progressive collapse. Computer models and recovered fragments later confirmed that sequence. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, the American Society of Civil Engineers, and independent laboratories recreated the physics over years of simulation. Their conclusions matched the eyewitness footage frame by frame. The question of Building 7 WTC-7 collapsed hours later, untouched by aircraft, and that mystery fueled decades of online argument. NIST's separate investigation traced the cause to uncontrolled fires fed by ruptured fuel lines and office contents. Heat expanded floor beams on one critical column, column 79, until it lost support. Once that column fell, the building's internal frame cascaded. No credible evidence of explosives was found in debris or seismic data, a result verified by multiple engineering bodies. Why doubt persisted to many citizens, the science sounded abstract compared to what they saw. A clean, vertical fall that looked deliberate. Yet buildings don't topple like trees. When internal supports fail almost simultaneously, collapse can appear symmetrical even from fire alone. Misinterpretation of those visuals and the emotional weight behind them turned an engineering puzzle into a symbol of distrust. What the evidence tells us, the consensus among structural experts is clear. The collapses were the product of impact damage, fire, and gravity acting on designs never meant for such trauma. That explanation doesn't dull the horror, but it replaces speculation with mechanism. The debate, though, revealed something larger than physics, a fracture in public confidence that still defines how people interpret tragedy. In Part 4, The Information War, we'll explore how the internet turned those doubts into movements, reshaping truth itself in the digital age. Part 4, The Information War. When the towers fell, a generation watched it live. For the first time, the world experienced global tragedy in real time. No delay, no filter. But what began as a shared moment of grief quickly became a battlefield of interpretation. The fight for truth didn't happen in boardrooms or intelligence agencies. It happened online. The rise of digital doubt in 2001, the internet was still young. Message boards, early forums, and email chains. Within days, images of the attack spread faster than news anchors could keep up. Every frame, every angle was dissected by people searching for meaning. Video loops slowed to a crawl, audio enhanced, screenshots compared. Each unanswered question found a digital echo chamber ready to amplify it. By 2005, a wave of independent documentaries like Loose Change had gone viral, arguing alternate theories of collapse, foreknowledge, and hidden motives. Millions watched, not because they trusted them, but because they didn't trust anything else. The mainstream dismissed these productions. The internet embraced them. What had once been whispers became a movement. Mistrust as a culture. The early 2000s were an era of contradiction. Government calls for unity, yet wars launched on uncertain evidence. As the invasion of Iraq unfolded on claims that later proved false, every unverified intelligence report fed a larger doubt. If they could lie about weapons, what else could they lie about? A new public reflex was born, to question everything. Believe nothing and share first, verify later. The algorithm effect social media supercharged the trend. Platforms optimized for engagement found that outrage, not accuracy, kept users scrolling. Content that confirmed suspicion outperformed careful reporting. Each click built walls around belief systems, isolating people into self-reinforcing tribes of truth seekers and debunkers. For the first time in history, information itself became decentralized, but so did credibility. The democratization of speech blurred the line between expert and echo. Facts could be found, twisted, and re-uploaded in minutes. The internet didn't just tell stories about 9/11, it reprogrammed how society defines truth. The legacy of confusion 2 decades later. The 9/11 information war feels less like a battle over history and more like a preview of our present. From pandemics to elections, the same dynamics repeat: evidence versus emotion, data versus narrative. The tragedy didn't just change security policy, it changed communication itself. In Part 5, Memory, Meaning, and the Search for Truth, we close with the human side of the story, how a single morning reshaped trust, identity, and the very way we remember. Part 5, Memory, Meaning, and the Search for Truth time has a way of turning facts into feelings. 2 decades after that morning, the memories of 9/11 no longer live only in news footage or official archives. They live in the choices people made afterward, in the questions they still ask, and in the uneasy balance between remembering and moving on. The weight of memory for survivors and families. Every anniversary is both a wound and a warning. The skyline may be rebuilt, but the absence remains. The memorial pools where the towers once stood are mirrors, quiet spaces reflecting names carved in stone and faces reflected in water. Beneath them lie the foundations of a lesson written in loss, that security, freedom, and truth are never permanent. They must be guarded, renewed, and questioned responsibly. The echo of division, yet even in mourning, society fractured. Some clung to official accounts as a bulwark against chaos. Others searched endlessly for hidden motives, unable to accept that ordinary failure could yield extraordinary destruction. The gap between those two instincts, trust and suspicion, became a defining feature of the 21st century. In that divide, misinformation found its home. The search continues today. Engineers still publish studies, historians uncover new documents, and families fight for transparency. The pursuit of truth didn't end with a report. It continues as a process. Not all questions have answers. Some evolve as technology and understanding grow. What matters is how we ask them, whether in good faith guided by evidence or in anger guided by fear. What endures 9/11 revealed the best and worst of humanity. Heroism on stairwells, panic on streets, unity that felt unbreakable, and polarization that proved it wasn't. It reminded the world that reality itself can be fragile, and that rebuilding isn't only about steel and concrete. It's about trust. History's verdict on that day is still being written. The facts remain, but the meaning belongs to those who keep searching, carefully, humbly, and together. because the pursuit of truth is not a conspiracy. It's a responsibility.